Managing expectations. This video will give a brief overview of how you can manage your expectations as sponsors, as well as the expectations of the refugees you are sponsoring. Before we look into expectations, how they are formed, and how to manage expectations, I would like to remind everybody what their role as sponsors is when it comes to settlement. For the Government of Canada, settlement is about outcomes, checking things off a list, such as finding employment, learning English, learning life skills to function well in Canada, and learning about the town or the city and the community that the refugees will be living in. But both newcomers and sponsors have aspirations that go beyond this. Your role as sponsors is to enable the newcomers to equip themselves and make their own decisions. You will not always agree about the decisions they make, such as how to allocate their monthly allowance, or some of the foods they may choose to eat, or some of the personal habits or hobbies they have, but your role is to enable them to make these decisions. Your role as sponsors is to facilitate and empower the newcomers. So what is empowerment? Empowerment is enabling somebody to gain greater control over their environment so that they are able to attain their aspirations. Expectations are completely normal and are even to be expected. When engaging in refugee sponsorship, you may have expectations about the refugee sponsorship experience, including how the refugee will act or what kind of relationship you will have with the refugees. The refugees you have sponsored may also have expectations, perhaps about your sponsoring group or what life in Canada will be like. So having expectations is not inherently problematic, even if they're high. It is actually normal and good to have them. I'd also like to emphasize that there is no right or wrong when it comes to expectations in the refugee sponsorship context. This is because expectations are based on context, experience, our emotions, our imaginations, our perceptions, and our desires. So why are realistic expectations important? When expectations are realistic, it is easy to experience success. On the other hand, when expectations are too high or too rigid, it could lead to disappointment. So what are some of the dangers of unrealistic expectations in the refugee sponsorship process? When expectations are unrealistic, they can lead to misunderstandings, conflict, and in serious cases of sponsorship breakdown. Newcomers coming to Canada, and this is just not exclusive to refugees, but all newcomers coming to Canada have great expectations when it comes to Canada, about what Canada will be like, about their employability, and their earning potential. Unfortunately, in some cases, these expectations collide with reality, and this can lead to disappointment, feelings of frustration, feelings of helplessness, and can affect mental and physical health. So expectations become problematic when they are unreasonable or do not match reality. So some questions for reflection that I would like you to consider individually and collectively with your sponsoring group. And these questions will help frame your expectations as well as help you determine whether your expectations as sponsors are realistic. So the first question, why are you engaging in refugee sponsorship? What do you hope to get out of the refugee sponsorship process? What hopes do you have for the refugee that you have or are sponsoring? Does the rest of your sponsoring group share these hopes? And do these hopes match the hopes of the sponsored refugee? Are you being fair and realistic? And how would you feel if your hopes or the sponsored refugee's hopes do not materialize? So now we'll look to see how unrealistic expectations are formed. So you have the source. You have rumors, the Canadian myth, the North American myth. The source can also be media. There's lack of information, false information, confusion regarding various refugee sponsorship programs, a lack of communication. That's with the sponsoring group as well as the international organizations and institutions involved in the refugee sponsorship process, and a lack of pre-departure orientation. So one of these, or one or more of these, will be the source for unrealistic expectations. So from the source, the newcomers may form, or the sponsoring group may form, unrealistic expectations about entitlements, rights, quality and quantity of support, quality of life in Canada, and opportunities in Canada. And when these unrealistic expectations are not met, this results in feelings of neglect, feeling disadvantaged, feeling wronged, disappointment, confusion, frustration, anger, distrust, and resentment. And this could, in some cases, lead to misunderstandings, conflict, secondary migration, ineffective communication, unmet needs, and in severe cases, sponsorship breakdown. So what is the key to managing expectations or having realistic expectations? The key to managing expectations is communication. Communication is a very helpful way of managing expectations. And it is considered to be best practice to effectively communicate thoughts, emotions, and expectations at various stages. So pre-arrival, if possible, upon arrival, and throughout the duration of the sponsorship process. So throughout the sponsorship process, you would monitor and evaluate the sponsorship on a regular basis. And when you're coming towards the end of the sponsorship period, you will also begin to address any concerns that the newcomers may have, as well as make it clear to the newcomers that you are coming to the end of the sponsorship period and provide them with information about transitioning from the sponsorship to being able to do things by themselves. So ideally, communication should take place between sponsors and the refugees that you have sponsored. Communication should take place within the sponsoring group and between sponsors and any relatives the refugees may have in Canada. Ideally, you would start communicating with the refugees you have sponsored as early as possible, ideally pre-arrival, but that may not be possible in all cases. Thank you for watching this video on managing expectations. For more information, guidance, and resources on Canada's refugee sponsorship programs, please visit our websites, rstp.ca and ontario.rstp.ca. Thank you.